Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a follow-up to yesterday's Sunday stream, because there was still some leftover items to discuss regarding the Sunday stream, and I was on a schedule yesterday, so this is sort of a supplemental and try to wrap up what we had yesterday, and also have an update, at least on one of the stories I covered yesterday. But before I get into today's information for yesterday's stream, who's joining me for this oddly timed ambush stream on a Monday? It is Monday, isn't it? I think it is. Anyway, Adam Nixon, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Kay Scholl, good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg. Jen T. Maxey, good morning. John Miller, good morning. Ryan R., good morning. And Michael Sander, good morning. I'll say some more good mornings as we go. I have a favor to ask for anybody in the chat that's able to. For some reason, YouTube has now disallowed me from pinning to the top of the chat box my own messages. And so I am unable to pin to the top of the chat box the GoFundMes that I have posted in my first comment there on the chat box. So if someone, one of you audience member peoples, if you could please kindly copy and paste the GoFundMes into a message of your own, apparently then I can pin the message to the top of the chat box. I have no idea why this is happening. But there you go. Simon Willikins, you kind of came in mid-sentence, so I had to restart the stream. Am I having broadcasting issues? Somebody tell me if you can't hear me. Okay, well. John Miller, thank you so much for posting that. Let me pin that to the top of the chat box. Yeah, I don't know what has happened here. It's got to be some kind of error going on with YouTube because this just started the other day. But anyway. So there we go. At the top of the chat box, you'll find the GoFundMes, thankfully provided by John Miller, for our friends Twisted Skipster, James Colley, Grisella, and Angry Illinoisian. If you can take a look at those and donate if you're able. If you're not able to donate, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be appreciated. All right. So first up, an update on the story I covered yesterday regarding the moon launch. A private rocket launch to the moon carrying several different commercial clients' packages of information and or experiments, including NASA, but most pointedly, the remains of several individuals who wanted to have themselves buried, at least in part, on the moon. And the Navajo Nation objected to this because doing such a thing would desecrate the moon in some way and also wasn't being done under the proper regulations or authority, or it was a mixed bag of strange and odd abstract complaints as reported by CNN yesterday as to why the Navajo Nation wanted to stop the launch. Well, they didn't stop the launch, but as I at least suggested yesterday, launches like these tend to have problems. And lo and behold, this launch has had one. Lunar lander suffers critical fuel loss in major setback while en route to the moon. I'll go over this briefly and then we'll get back to the Google video. Astrobotic Technology, the company that developed the first lunar lander to launch from the United States in 5 decades, said its spacecraft has suffered critical propellant loss attempting to correct itself after running into a major issue in space. Just hours after launching from Florida toward the moon early Monday morning, the company announced the spacecraft was in jeopardy, and not the Alex Trebek kind. The lunar lander, dubbed Peregrine, was unable to place itself in a position facing the sun, likely because of a propulsion issue, according to the company. The wayward orientation prevented the spacecraft from charging its batteries. Quote, unfortunately, it appears the failure within the propulsion system is causing a critical loss of propellant, unquote, Astrobotics said in a mission update posted just after 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Quote, the team is working to try and stabilize this loss, but given the situation, we have prioritized maximizing the science and data we can capture. We are currently assessing what alternative mission profiles may be feasible at this time, unquote. So basically, they lost the moon. Something like that sounds like not recoverable. We're going to try to get as much data as we can with this now failed mission, but we're not hitting the moon. That's what I interpret from that language. That could mean the company will not attempt to land the Peregrine lander on the moon as it was expected to do on February 23rd. Well, yes, if it can't even effectively escape Earth's orbit and head its way to the moon, it's probably not going to land on the moon. Astrobotic was initially able to make contact with the vehicle after its 2:18 a.m. Eastern Standard Time launch, but then the mission hit a snag that left the vehicle pointed away from the sun and unable to charge its battery. In an update issued on social media on Monday, Astrobotic said that it believes the likely cause of the problem, quote, is a propulsion anomaly that, if proven true, threatens the ability of the spacecraft to soft land on the moon, unquote. Astrobotic initially said that the anomaly, an aerospace term for an issue or problem that threatens a mission, quote, prevented Astrobotic from achieving a stable sun-pointing orientation, unquote, the company posted on X, formerly Twitter, at 9:37 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It added that its engineers were troubleshooting the issue in real time, unlike troubleshooting it in, fake time. The sun-facing position is typically necessary to provide solar power for charging a spacecraft's batteries. Indeed. Mission controllers then, quote, developed and executed an improvised maneuver to reorient the solar panels towards the sun, according to the company. The effort proved successful, Astrobotic said. Quote, the team's improvised maneuver was successful in reorienting Peregrine's solar array towards the sun. We are now charging the battery, the company said in an update posted at 12:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Still, the company said it must correct the underlying propulsion issue. The spacecraft would need to use its onboard thrusters to make a soft touchdown on the moon. Without going through all this stuff, did they mention anything about the Navajo Nation in this? Doesn't look like it, or at least nothing that I see out of hand. So I guess the sort of unsaid information in this story is the Navajo Nation's negotiations with the White House failed, and the launch occurred anyway. Now the question is, with a propulsion issue, and even with its batteries charged, can Peregrine make its way to the moon? And even then, can it land softly such that the equipment on board and the burial capsules and all this other stuff can still be successfully executed? I guess we will see, but it's not looking good. So that's that for now. If there are any other updates on this potential moon landing, this landing into my backyard here on the moon, I will let you know. Before I get into the remainder of yesterday's Google video, I'll explain that in a moment. Who else is here? Let me scroll up a bit. We have Urkele DeStefano, good morning. Jamie Melquist, good morning. Todd Swank, good morning. Nathaniel Rotskull, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Roger Reynolds, good morning. Good morning to you all. All right, so for those of you that were not here for yesterday's Sunday stream, in addition to talking about the potential at the time moon launch, which has now happened, but almost certainly failed probably, as well as the resignation and or ouster, depending on how you look at it, of Claudine Gay at Harvard, I also looked at a panel discussion from Google Cloud about DEI and its benefits in Google. And I was expecting more of the same. We do this, that, and the other with DEI, and here are the benefits and all that good stuff. Well, what I didn't hear was the same. Instead, I was hearing old stuff. I was hearing softened language. I was hearing couched language. And I was hearing things like diversity of thought, diversity of perspective. And save for one instance, there wasn't even anything near an explicit mention of race or ethnicity up until they said something to the effect of minority-owned businesses. It was very bizarre to me that in the 17 minutes that we covered at the time, they kept sort of dancing around the truth of DEI and kept sort of playing up the more abstract, more at least indicative, meritorious aspects of people rather than their aesthetic. And I thought to myself, why is this? And so this is where I enter a little bit of potential tinfoil hat territory. And I'm happy to be criticized on this if this does not turn out to be the case. But I had a theory, and I know I'm repeating this for those of you that were here yesterday, but all the same. I had a theory after the affirmative action decision dropped and its reverberations into the DEI apparatus. That companies that wanted to avoid what would almost inevitably be legal action once the diversity argument failed at the federal level to allow an institution, such as a college, to use race as a determinative factor in opportunity. Once that argument failed at the federal level, companies practicing DEI would be in danger. Legal danger. Not that they weren't already in legal danger, in my opinion, but even more so. For their only argument, the only leg they've had to stand on, and all the rhetoric they put out about DEI over the years is the benefits of diversity. So, if you can't argue the benefits of diversity anymore as a legal defense against challenge, you're in trouble. So, companies have three options, I said. Either they could stop using DEI cold turkey, just scrub it from their prospectus, from their website, from their rhetoric, and hope it just goes away and nobody bothers them. But of course, doing something like that would be tantamount to an admission of wrongdoing. Secondly, they could try to phase DEI out over time, or I guess I should have made it more a possibility of transform what DEI means to try to avoid any such questions. Or thirdly, they could just double down and continue going forward and, lean on virtue. Well, here's the thing. I might be overreaching, and maybe I'm overinterpreting, but this panel discussion from Google, one of the largest corporations on the planet, going into a public sphere on a stage in front of everybody and talking about DEI in such a insulated, muffled fashion, whereas Google has been for years a full-throated supporter of DEI and diversity and making sure that there's equity for everybody and so on and so forth. It struck me as kind of odd. It struck me as kind of out of character. And so that's the long, circuitous, scenic route to me saying, I think Google might be laundering DEI for its own benefit in the long term. I think Google may have effectively held up the white flag to the opposition to DEI. This might be a canary in the proverbial coal mine of Google's strategy going forward with its DEI initiative. But again, that's just me guessing. I could be wrong. I might in fact be wrong, but that's my best guess. So let me jump ahead to about 17 minutes on the clock here. So the majority of what we heard yesterday was very carefully crafted corporate speak and questions that, again, really downplayed the classic elements of DEI and instead were effectively upplaying maybe real diversity that you want in a business, diversity of thought, diversity of experience, things like that. I mean, I guess we'll see as I bring up the cosmic nature of everything. So that's the preamble for that. A couple more hellos here before I begin with the remainder of this. Texas Attorney General Secret Agent, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Anybody else that I might have missed? Did I already... The Misery Machine, good morning. Does more moon launches threaten the Scribe moon base? Well, it threatens my view. I mean, I live in Crater Valley. I have an excellent view of, the rim of the crater. So all this earth garbage that keeps coming down, especially if they start launching and landing like little pellets of people's cremated ashes and things, it's just like, what am I supposed to do with this? Do I, build my base around it? I don't know. I tells you. There goes the neighborhood. Welcome, Misery Machine. But anyway, so let's wrap up the rest of this Google panel discussion, see what else they have to say, see if the extended time in this panel discussion leads them to be more specific about what they're talking about, because so far, between the three guests, they really haven't said anything of substance except for maybe one or two things. So again, we're starting at about 17 minutes into the video, and let's...
You're basically expanding beyond designing, for your direct consumer market, right? You're looking at how you also benefit the community. So designing for good.
Oh, that's right. I completely blanked it out. Yes, the majority of what they've been talking about so far are basic product development steps, focus groups. How are you going to develop this product to serve the community and so on? And the bizarre, unclarified example from one of our speakers was, oh, well, during the pandemic, we offered this portfolio of services to minority businesses. But then one of my subordinates came to me and said, well, wait, you need to add this service or product, never specified what it was. Because if you don't add this service or product to the offering, then my ex-convict brother will likely commit more crimes and go back to jail. And for those of you that weren't here yesterday, I'm not kidding you. That was some kind of example of how DEI is helping a community. I still don't know. And I think that's what we were wrapping up here with this question. But anyway, moving forward.
Right. Actually, in that case, we didn't, the product was the same already.
Yeah.
It was just a use case we had never thought about. And the use case came to be because of the pandemic. This is one example. We have many, but.
What was the use case? I want to know what product will stop ex-cons from committing more crimes.
And so all of a sudden we're like, oh, that's really interesting. Like we had never thought about that use, but you're right. That's a great way to do it. So we had to do a quick software change and enable it, but it made.
What was it? Why can't you say what it was?
Made a huge difference.
Awesome.
What? How?
And we'll keep along the topic of belonging a bit. I'm going to move us along to the next question in terms, because I think we kind of covered the first one. But in terms of, when we talk about employee voice on belonging and how this can help attract and retain a representative workforce. So again, kind of talking along the people.
Representative workforce. What do you mean by representative? Representing what?
Side of things, but also I think all three of you play very important roles in that work in Google and would love for you to share with the audience. So, Sujata?
Oh, okay.
This sounds so curated, doesn't it?
I love belonging. I mean, just the concept of it, because I think it was something that was missing when we were talking about just D&I in the beginning.
Yes, belonging was an additional word added to the litany about 2 or 3 years ago when they were still trying to figure out how to modify the whole thing. First, it was D&I, D and I. Then there was DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then they tried JEDI and called themselves Jedis for about 6 months or something, until Scientific American told them, God, that's a little bit more corporate than we want it to be. And then they dropped the J for justice. Then they've tried DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, where I've always said it should be DEBI. You could call it Debbie and make a cute little cartoon avatar for it. They've also tried to add access. So DEIA, or they should probably make it IDEA for idea. But the problem is they keep wavering away from uncentering diversity at the front of the, whatever you want to call it, the acronym. Because we don't want to decenter diversity, because that's the primary element of the whole thing. So yes, D&I, DEI, JEDI, DEIA, and DEIB. And belonging doesn't mean anything. Every word you add on to the litany is still tainted, fruit of the poison tree, of the problems with the aesthetic nature of the diversity component. So whatever you say about belonging, great. You want to go to work and feel like you belong. You're part of a team. Wonderful. What does that have to do with the previous letters on the list?
And it's for you to be your authentic self, I would say. And having, I'm coming from as a woman of color. And
as a woman of color, two elements that say absolutely nothing about you.
And, someone who did not grow up here suffered a lot in the beginning. I feel like, especially in meetings where my voice didn't matter in many meetings, or even if I said something, even if I had a voice, nobody validated it or even amplified it, which meant like I didn't feel like I belonged.
Maybe what you had to say was irrelevant. I don't know what to tell you. Not knowing the specific circumstances. I've been in conference rooms where I was attending because I was asked to attend, but I was not there to speak. And if I had an idea, maybe it wasn't the proper format for it, or maybe I had no idea what was going on and I was just there to listen and I had nothing to offer. And even if I did, it might not be a very good idea. I don't know. Does everybody need to be validated all the time at work? Is everything you have to say or do of value in every instance? And if you don't feel like you belong, short of someone actively trying to force you out of a situation, I don't know. I feel like there's a portion of this entire uh, problem that might be self-generated. But again, maybe I'm just old-fashioned.
Right? So it may look like, you said something important in a meeting, but if nobody validated, that sense of belonging goes all off, and that feeling of being the only one gets amplified.
That's a you problem. Being the only one. So you would feel more comfortable with people in the room who look like you? I mean, that's the implication.
To me, I think that is what needs to be fixed. You may get everything right in getting your diversity goals and hiring the right people.
Oh, what is a diversity goal and what are the right people? I know I'm not going to get answers to these questions, but they always become the ones that I ask.
But if you can't retain them and if you can't feel like they belong, they're not going to thrive, they're not going to be their best self, and they're not going to perform, and I've seen it for myself. The days when I feel like my voice mattered, I feel like I belong, I'm giving my best, and I know I can do better.
And again, this might be just an old-fashioned sense that I have. I'm not going to say that a sense of purpose, a sense of teamwork, a sense of belonging to a certain extent is important and can be important when trying to get something done in the workplace. But as far as validation is concerned, is my paycheck showing up every month? If the answer is yes, and I'm not being pulled into the boss's office to tell me I'm doing a bad job or something, I don't know. Maybe I'm just simple like that. I feel pretty validated at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Cassandra?
Yeah, I think Sujata, I think, said it beautifully. And I think another aspect is I also want to acknowledge and show appreciation, right, for allies, because I think allies are so critical and so important.
Yes, allies, anybody who does not belong in our group, but who are effectively subservient supporters of our group and or demographic. To this point, I have not had allies explained to me in such a way that invalidates that assessment.
But one of the aspects Clay Baber.
Find an ally just to make sure.
Yeah, you want to find an ally. But one of the things too is I think for an ally, really, we always say we want that ally to be in a game with us. And the analogy, that I've shared with some of our allies is, it's almost like using a sports game. Like when you are someone from an underrepresented group or whatnot, you're in that game 24/7.
Underrepresented demographic, you mean? I know I always pick on this, but there is a distinct difference between group and demographic. Group denotes a shared thought process, goal, so on and so forth. Just because you're from the same demographic as someone else, again, does not somehow unite each of you into a monolith. And I just get irritated at the implication otherwise with these things. But okay, yes, an ally to an underrepresented demographic. So someone who does not belong because they don't fit, but they need to be a supporter because you're part of a demographic, I guess. And people from certain demographics obviously need extra help, I guess.
You do not get a timeout. Whereas some of our allies who have the best intentions, they do have the benefit, or if you want to say luxury, to say, hey, coach, I need a timeout. And I think it's those allies who can understand and appreciate that they are an ally, but they have that option to get out the game or take a timeout.
Oh, are you talking about privilege? I need a timeout. A timeout from what? I can't exist in a constant state of struggle and self-pity. I need a timeout, so I'm going to go do something else. Does that make me a bad person or a lesser ally or something?
And people, in the URGs it's 24/7, whether it's 9 to 5 at work or after. Like, I'm always a female, I'm always a person of color and so forth. And I think.
And what exactly am I supposed to feel sorry for you? Is that it? I'm supposed to constantly feel, if I'm an ally, I have to constantly see you as a 24/7 victim, or else I'm not being a good ally? Okay, and I'm not being facetious when I ask this. How else am I supposed to interpret that?
That is why it's so critical to have different representation, because not just for that sense of belonging, but a sense of understanding and appreciation.
What I know I'm a broken record. What do you mean? Can you give me an example?
And one of the things that, for those who may not know, like, I was hired into Google because of Anna. And I always tell people that not every invitation is the right invitation.
You were invited into Google because of her. Why?
But when Anna gave me that invitation, it was because I saw in her leadership team, and I saw in other leaders that diversity, not just of, gender or ethnic backgrounds, but also.
Oh, well, finally. Okay. I mean, I was wondering how long it would take. Not just of gender or ethnic background. So wait, you saw in her a diversity of whatever we're about to get to. I'll jump back a few seconds. And then she invited you. I'm not quite sure how this process worked.
There's that diversity, not just of, gender or ethnic backgrounds, but also of voice and experiences. So as you go.
Oh, voice and experiences. Yeah, well, I'm glad you made those the tertiary consideration of what is valuable, not just of gender and ethnicity, but also of elements that might indicate merit or skill and ability. It's nice to have those.
Oh, not just to retain, but to recruit. You want to have people to feel like, wow, I could be myself here. I can have a voice and I can make a difference. And I think that's why it's important.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I still don't understand the dynamic that led to your employment at Google, but okay. We got 6 minutes left.
Awesome. Yeah.
I just want to add, big mentor of mine told me very early, thankfully in my career, about recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever you send to recruit, you're going to get more of them back.
Whoever you send to recruit, you're going to get more of them back. Okay, and with that idea in mind, how do you select for your recruiters?
So whoever you send, doesn't matter. If you send me, you're going to get more people like me. If we send you, we're going to send more people like you. So whoever it is, that's what you're going to get back.
So if I send a career professional who has the requisite skills, education, and experience necessary to fulfill the role of the job that we're looking to fill, then I would expect to have people come in who, in relative terms, match those criteria? Or is that not what you're talking about?
So think deeply about who you want to send to recruit, and like not every person is the right person for. If you're college recruiting, send fun, younger people. I mean, like send people that they're going to connect with, because that's how they're going to make the decision. It's.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So someone who's of the similar age group or on the same page with socially and culturally and things. Okay. Well, I mean, those are elements of, possessed skills, abilities, knowledge, and character. All right. Nothing so far, but I can't help but be suspicious.
Very hard for them to make the decision if they come back, honestly, even look at this panel, right? If I was a guy applying to this and this is the panel, I'd be like, I don't know, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, because, men are sexist by default. Men see women and they go, ugh! Right. Obviously, those inherently misogynistic men seeing a female recruiter at a college would go like, ugh. It wouldn't be, I don't know, the fact that you're representing one of the largest, most prosperous companies on the planet first and foremost. No. If I see a woman recruiter, boy howdy, break out the garlic, the crosses, and the steaks, everybody. And I don't mean the prime rib.
So you have to be kind of really thoughtful about what you're doing in
Mm.
terms of who you're sending to recruit. And then once they're here, to Sujata's point, again, awesome that somebody's on the table, whoever it is, it doesn't matter.
It most assuredly matters. You've made that clear in the subtext of this entire presentation.
But that doesn't mean that their vote is getting counted, right? And
What?
nothing more annoying. I'm sure all four of us and many of you have had the situation where you make a comment and somebody else repeats it. By the way, it happens to my husband. He's 6'4", white guy, so it has happened to everybody.
Well, then what is his 6'4" white guy? You brought it up. Somebody says something and someone else repeats it. Uh-huh. And what is that plagiarism? Are you talking about a man taking credit for a woman's work? Oh, except that it happened to your husband. So maybe it's just a human fallacy.
And somebody else repeats it, and then they get the credit for the idea. So that's super, super, super annoying.
I cannot say I've ever been in a situation, at least as far as I know, where I've said something, someone else has repeated what I've said in that same setting, and then instantaneously being given credit for what I said. I can't say that's ever happened to me. It may be the case that I've said something and someone else has taken that idea, repeated it elsewhere, and taken credit for it, but then I'd have no knowledge of it. It has nothing to do with me. I wouldn't know it until after the fact if I found out. So I don't know. Just out of curiosity, I'm gonna put a poll in the chat. How about I put a poll in the chat? I'm gonna put a poll in the chat. Has it ever been the case? Have you ever had an idea stolen right in front of you? With the implication as well that if you have, the credit has been given to the other person, because I don't think I have enough characters. I'll say, and the credit stolen. I'm not saying it hasn't happened or couldn't happen to people. I'm just curious to know from those of you in the chat, has this ever been the case in your experience? And I mean your experience. I suppose if you've witnessed such a thing. Let's just put it that way. And again, it has to be like in front of you, because I'm always imagining this scenario, and I always see it represented in reenactments and stories, that it's in a conference room, going around the table, somebody says something, 3 minutes later, somebody else says the same thing, and that person suddenly gets praised for it. Has that been your experience? Okay.
And I think the more important thing to do that is when you're sitting there realizing, boy, is this happening on my watch, you know? And I think calling it out makes a big, big difference.
And how often does that happen? She's not going to give us any statistics or anything, but is that a common thing? Is it a common thing at Google?
And teeny, like
microaggressions,
averaging down to 0 kindness can go such a long way.
Oh, okay. Sorry. When I think of teeny, tiny, and someone's talking about, being offended by something, I think, microaggressions. Okay. Yes. Kindness can go a long way.
And so you can just make a teeny comment to somebody, even if maybe you didn't feel comfortable saying it in the meeting, but you said it afterward to them, like, hey, I heard you. That was your idea, right? Like when they'll just like 1,000 flowers will bloom after that. So I would just call to action on that. You can make a huge difference in the culture that you want your startup to be. And in my opinion, and having lived it, good startups with good cultures, good startups with bad cultures, the bad culture eventually ate the product for breakfast. So you have to sort of keep that in mind.
I haven't heard a whole lot. I mean, just slightly here and there. They've mentioned this whole panel discussion was supposed to be about DEI in startups, but anything relating specifically to startups has been few and far between. But yeah, anyway.
Absolutely. And I think all of those are key messages in terms of when you're looking to build a culture that's inclusive. you have such a great opportunity as startups to do it from day one. So that's part of your values, right?
Why don't you guys talk about equity? Why don't you talk about equality of outcome? Why don't you talk about what you mean by diversity in reality?
If that's embedded in your values, then it becomes part of the way you work and expected, and behaviors of your employees as well. And the other thing I want to call out in terms of attracting a representative workforce is be open to exploring non-traditional channels, right?
Non-traditional channels. What constitutes a non-traditional channel?
So instead of going to the same schools, or maybe the schools you may have attended or what have you, if you want to attract a representative workforce.
Representative of what?
Be open to going to historically Black colleges and universities.
Oh, okay. Right. Representative. Okay. Yes. So put up racial filters on hiring policies. See, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the laundering of DEI wasn't this, or maybe this is just one step in the process, because up until this point, they really stayed away from being explicit about aesthetics, but now we're getting back into it again at the very end.
It's Hispanic serving institutions.
Okay, so you want to filter on the basis of whether or not someone's Black or whether or not someone's Hispanic.
Community colleges, technical colleges. You'll be amazed at the talent that you find there.
You're not talking about talent. You're not talking about talent. If you're talking about talent, then yeah, you want to spread your recruitment efforts to different schools that focus on different vocations. But you're not talking about vocations. You're not talking about skill or knowledge or expertise in a particular discipline. You're talking about aesthetics first. Your first concern is aesthetics. All right. Well, I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same.
To create a more representative workforce. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Oh, well, thanks for that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so why might a startup's DEI plan be important to customers? So we're switching the gears just a little bit, and we'll wrap.
I suppose if your customers are particularly focused on the aesthetic of the workforce, or if your customers are trying to stay within the lines of the DEI ethos and only do business with you if you agree with the conformity of it all. I don't know. We'll get to it in a second. Let me close up the poll here. I think I've had it up for a while. No, it's more of a split than I had imagined, honestly. Have you ever had an idea stolen right in front of you and the credit stolen? No, 52%. Yes, 47%. So effectively within the margin of error, pardon me, of 50-50. So I'm surprised. I'm honestly surprised. Well, for those of you that have had that happen to you, that sucks. I'm just representative of myself. I can't say it's ever happened to me, but I always wonder, is that actually a common thread in life and business? I suppose it does happen. A couple more hellos here before I get back to it. Those ain't real, dude. Good morning. Tier Alexander, the gentleman Lich. Good morning. Fostonia. Good morning. Anybody else? Scanner Daffley. Good morning. And I don't see anyone else I didn't already say good morning to. So if I missed you, I apologize, but we're almost done with this. So let's, only got 3 minutes left. And apparently this is like on the last question or so. So what was the last question you wanted to ask? Hold on one second here.
Representative workforce, be open to going to historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, community colleges, technical colleges. You'll be amazed at the talent that you find there to create a more representative workforce. So just wanted to share that as well. Great. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. That's very subtle.
Okay, so why might a startup's DEI plan be important to customers? So we're switching the gears just a little bit, and we'll round it out a little bit here, so we'll give you some time to ask questions as well.
Oh, boy.
But when we think about the startup plan for a DEI startup plan for these companies, and why that could be important to customers, and how can it really help them create a competitive advantage?
Okay, why would a DEI program at a startup be important to customers? All right, so if I'm a company, a startup, I'm trying to make my way into an established industry, let's say, but I've got an angle, I've got a product, I've got a twist on it that I'm trying to work my way into the market, or I've seen a gap thereof, and I've got a DEI program. Why do my customers need me to have a DEI program to feel comfortable working with me?
I feel like this year.
This is
Ah.
yours. Yeah, this is yours.
Thank you. So I think it's great because I think, we hear from customers, I mean, we get almost 1 billion interactions a year.
You know what? I've used Google. I would wager to say that I've used Google at least 5 days out of the week in some fashion for the last 15, 20, almost 20 years practically. I forget exactly when Google went live or something, but let's just say for the better part of the last 2 decades. I do not know, nor do I particularly care about the aesthetics of the individuals behind the scenes who I've never seen. It's not like I'm going to a Google store when I search something, a storefront, a brick and mortar. I don't see the people there. And even if I did, I wouldn't care. The question is, does the thing work and provide me what I require of it? But okay, you've had 1 billion interactions, not in person.
And some of it is they need help, but some of it is just comments to say, hey, we really appreciate this. We love how Google donated these products or how we lean into this and creating and designing, so the products or the services and whatnot.
Okay, if someone is thanking you for a donation, they're not effectively a customer unless you're just kind of using them to, as an ad campaign in a way, which I suppose you could be.
And I think, in this world, this amazing world we live in today, I think a lot of people are just socially conscious.
Oh.
And they realize that they do have the final decision on how they spend their dollar.
Yes. Prior to now, no one else knew that they had the final decision on how they spend their dollar. They just gave that power over to, well, I mean, I suppose it depends on who you are or what association you're a member of. I won't go any deeper into that one.
And they want to do it with companies that, to your point, the time that it aligns with their values. It aligns with, what they believe in and who they want to believe in and so forth.
My only value assessment of Google is, does your product work? I could not care less about your ideology, short of you guys doing something that is so demonstrably evil. Well, I guess that's already, I guess that ship has sailed. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like when you basically have a monopoly on the market for ease of use and accessibility to tools and services that make life functional in a lot of ways and are so interconnected with so many other things, does that override a moral consideration of what's going on at the company? I suppose it does. This is the world we live in.
And I think that's just so important. I mean, I have a son who's a sophomore in high school, and he's even asking questions like, Mom, what have you done today to help, the community or whatever? So
your son asks you, Mom, what have you done today to help the community? What have you done for me lately? I don't know, son. Why don't you go do something? That'd be my response. It's like, I go to work every day to put a roof over your head. If you're so concerned about the community, there's the ability for you to volunteer your time, and then, you can see what's going on with the community, whatever community we're talking about.
I think it's such an amazing, beautiful, especially younger generation. I mean, across all generations, but how it's so critical, and it's like the core.
Why is it critical? Can you come around to answering the question, even if it's a goofy question to begin with?
The core of a lot of people, and I think people are making buying decisions based on
100%. I think that the generations are definitely making decisions based on just how they perceive the brand and what they think of the brand.
And they're so vocal about it.
Oh, yeah, they're vocal about it. They're really vocal about the evils of corporations as they tweet from their Apple iPhones created in sweatshops.
With social media, it goes viral really fast.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yes, what is
it's
it?
pretty
Cancel
powerful.
culture
Very
happens,
powerful,
right?
yeah.
She manages
Cancel culture. You're just throwing out terms and phrases now, aren't you?
our social team, so yeah, that's a whole thing.
Absolutely.
Wow, that was a whole lot of nothing.
So, and then also too, when you're thinking about customers from a DEI perspective, in terms of who you want to reach as well, when you're, maybe bidding for new opportunities, if you have to submit requests for proposals, oftentimes they're asking you what you're doing around this work, right? And so that does give you the opportunity to showcase some of the programs that you may have.
Yes, because we have to keep up with our ESG scores to satisfy BlackRock and other financial institutions. What are you doing with this work? I have to report. I have to show we're really working on this.
Some of the opportunities that you provided for your employees, whether it be employee resource groups.
They didn't really talk about employee resource groups. I was hoping we get more details on their ERGs. I really wanted to know if they were going to talk about or mention a veterans ERG. You know how I love the veterans ERGs, almost an afterthought with these things.
Whether it be other like supplier diversity programs. But
supplier diversity programs. Golly, on what basis do you define diversity when it comes to suppliers? I wonder.
Things of that nature. A lot of times you get asked for that information in bids. So
I was just about to say that since we manage our supplier diversity, that is one thing we look at for our vendors. Like,
Vendors,
is this a small minority-owned business? And we look for that certification and so forth.
Well, wait, you can be certified as a minority-owned business. Okay, so still, you are filtering out who you will do business with on the basis of the race of the owners of the business. I seem to recall a similar philosophy being employed long ago in a far-off distant land called the South during the segregationist times, where contracts and business and so on and so forth was tossed around, but only if you matched the racial requirement. Gosh, I seem to recall that kind of thinking, that kind of discrimination, that kind of limit in opportunity on the basis of non-determinative factors of someone's merit, character, and value, that used to be a bad thing, didn't it? Did I step into Mr. Peabody's time machine by accident today or something? I don't know.
If I were to look at our top probably 15 contracts, I would say a good 80% of them will ask us to have a supplier diversity program.
Oh, wow. It really is endemic, isn't it? Oh, and that was it. That was the end of the segment from the panel discussion, no question and answer session on this segment. So there you go. Yeah, now that I've listened to the whole thing, I'm not quite sure how to interpret this. It really felt to me, and I said this yesterday, that the dancing around specificity, the focus, surprisingly, I was almost welcome to it, but I was almost got past my suspicions. The focus on diversity of thought, diversity of experience, skill, and otherwise, even if it was only rhetorical, kind of made me happy. I was like, okay, is this Google turning over a new leaf? Are they trying to edge themselves away from the decidedly problematic and controversial rhetoric of the past and quotas and so forth? But then we finish it off with, oh no, our policies of doing business with people first and foremost on whether or not they're of the acceptable skin color or gender or whatever. Yeah, I guess I couldn't hope for too much. Not much of a panacea for Google. But before I wrap things up, so there's that. So if you have any comments on that, by all means, put them in the chat if you're able. If you're listening to this in the future, I'd appreciate comments down there. If you haven't already hit the like button, please hit the like button, because or the dislike button if you didn't like it. I'll take whatever opinions or interactions you have. And thanks to those of you that participated in the little poll I put up earlier. I was kind of surprised to see the numbers so relatively close to one another. I maybe it's just my faith in humanity. What little of it there is, seem to think that, would somebody be as blatant as try to steal somebody's idea right in front of them? I guess there are people that do that. I didn't know that it was as frequent. But let's see. Advocatus Diaboli. I think Google just has them do talks to keep them away from the actual work of Google. Yeah, throughout that entire thing, I mean, they weren't talking specific shop stuff too much, and they're being very general, but I'd really be curious to know what exactly they do on a regular day. Especially the lady in the middle. Like, she was formerly a fashion designer. I didn't quite get what it was that they did. Their titles were very relatively amorphous. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, Angela Arriaga. Good morning to you. Hope you're having a good Monday morning. Let's see. Oh, John Trioxin, Scribelight. I've only ever seen that idea theft when Timon did it to Pumbaa. Yeah, I don't know. Like I say, maybe I just have rose-colored glasses to the world. I don't know. Roger Reynolds, how many people here have interacted with a human who works for Google, and how often? I mean, there have been at least a small handful of times where I have, specifically through Twitter, and I mean, going on the basis that YouTube is an arm of Google, and therefore, anybody working for YouTube is effectively working for Google. I have had to try to have addressed issues with my YouTube channel using the Team YouTube account on Twitter. And even though half of the time I'm pretty sure I'm talking to a bot, there have been a couple of instances where there was no doubt in my mind I was interacting with a person, because the responses were of a particular type that just came across, and there were misspellings as well that came across as this is a person I'm talking to. So in that sense, I have interacted with a Google employee at least on, I'll be generous and say 4 occasions in the last 7 years, thereabouts, that I can at least say with some certainty was a person. Beyond that, never. I'm not even sure that I've spoken to or met anybody in real life that just happens to work for Google, that I was just having a casual conversation with. So that'd be my answer. I don't know. When they talk about recruiting on the basis of the communities you serve, well, when you're a global internet company, I wish they would get more specific. The closest that they got was something about during the pandemic, they offered portfolios of services to, I guess, specifically minority-owned businesses. Not quite sure what that meant. They didn't specify. But then we got down to my ex-con brother, etc., which I'm still the most curious about. I really want to know what product, service, or element of Google's services was going to prevent that guy's brother from committing more crimes. Really would like to know. Let's see. Nathaniel Rotzko, my experience is incompetent managers steal ideas because they can't contribute anything of their own, and if you speak up about it, they'll fire you. Okay, now that is a scenario I could imagine. I could see that. All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is one of the benefits of at least how my company works is that every week we have, now it's basically a phone conference, but every week we would have a round table conference in front of the boss and everybody else, and everybody would have to talk about what they are doing, what they've accomplished, what they're working on next, and so on every week. And everybody had their turn and everybody took their time, and doesn't matter where you were on the totem pole, everybody had to participate and report. And so if anybody tried to repeat something somebody else said, at least in my company, that wouldn't, I mean, to repeat it and take credit for it would be like absolutely beyond the pale bad. That just wouldn't happen. Our group and our company is small enough that you just wouldn't have any room to get away with that. And the management division is not so stark that it's not like the one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So maybe I've just been spoiled the last several years. That could be. The time I spent in the regular corporate world, I never made it up high enough on the ladder that anything I would have to suggest or otherwise really meant anything. So maybe I've lived in an effective bubble on that subject. So if that's the case, I defer to those of you that have had the experience otherwise, and it sounds lousy. Roger Randall, sounds like these speakers get paid to do nothing all day with a little bit of complaining every now and then. Well, this is the problem. This wasn't, I don't know. The summary information we had about each speaker at the top of the thing was very generalized, but over the course of the presentation, the questions were as well a little bit abstract, but none of the speakers really did themselves any favors in selling me on what it is they actually do or what expertise they possess in doing whatever it is that they do, because they talked in such broad terms. They didn't give us any real specific details on what they do or how they did it. The closest example, again, was my ex-convict brother needs this thing or else he's going to commit more crimes. That is an amazing little anecdote telling us specifically how a Google product or service stopped this guy from recidivism, but didn't even tell us that. I mean, that sounds like a success story par excellence, but no, apparently not. An Advocast reminds me, yes, the one woman made smaller phones. Other than that, nothing. Yes, she showed up late to a meeting and said the phone was too big by about 3 millimeters or something. I tell you, if that is the first example of how your input on a DEI level led to product development, if nothing else occurs, that's a pretty weak statement. But I won't trodden ground any more than I have to here because that was yesterday's show. So anyway, everybody, thank you for joining me for this follow-up supplementary Sunday stream. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If anything else happens with the moonshot rocket, I might bring it up in future broadcasts, whether they have to do with the news or not. Just a programming note. Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can find me here, as always, for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for entertainment and education. I call it Edumacation. As well, the Sunday stream I do regularly on Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, as I did yesterday. Somewhere interspersed in between, maybe ambush streams. So if you want to catch me for those, you can either join me on Twitter at @scribe_light, or as I've just bought myself a few extra seconds to get a link to it, you can also join me on Discord, where I usually post streams and shows which I will appear or broadcast myself. And the Discord link is now in the chat. You just have to click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. In addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you've actually watched this stream. Today's secret word is propulsion, because I struggled with that over and over again at the top of the show. Propulsion. Just say hello, propulsion, and I'll know you watch the show and you can join the Discord server. But everyone, thank you so much again for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the GoFundMes at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity and consideration. Hope you all have a good rest of your Monday and the rest of the week ahead of you. Hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. That would be the wrong outro video. I clicked on the Sunday intro. I meant this.